Welcome to another episode of our mini-series, Strange and Unexplained Encounters. The mini-series where we venture beyond the typical fishing and hunting stories we talk about on our podcast. I'm your host, Pinche Ben, and today we're diving into a controversial topic, Bigfoot. For centuries, tales of mysterious ape-like creatures have captivated the imaginations of outdoorsmen, whether they were out fishing, hunting, or just being in the outdoors. Join me and the Cast and Blast crew today as we invite a special guest, renowned Bigfoot investigator Gabe Guerrero from South Texas Bigfoot Investigations. We're going to be discovering encounters, firsthand eyewitness accounts, alleged footprint discoveries, and other kinds of strange and unexplained encounters for this creature that has been talked about for centuries. We're going to talk about myth, truth, and just dive into the conversation about Bigfoot. We invite you on this special mini-series that we are just opening the conversation for. Is this something that can exist, or is it just a Texas folklore or an urban legend? This is a conversation about Bigfoot.
What up, what up, what up?
Good, pretty good.
Yeah, what's up, my boy?
Yeah, man, we go.
Alright, everything's queued up and ready to go. Have a seat. Y'all know what to do. And we're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Cast and Blast podcast. I'm your host, Pinche Ben. Joining me is my crew. This is the Cast and Blast crew. This is Robert Garcia
What's going on, guys?
and Jimmy Trent. Say what's up, Jimmy.
What's up?
Say what's up, damn it.
What's up?
Robert, we had a chance to talk to you last week, and we dove into a little bit of opening the door to the conversation of the strange and unknown or unexplained things that you see
That's
out.
right.
And Jimmy, we got a little guest calling in, and not a little guest. It's a kind of a big time deal. We're excited to have him on board, but we have a guest calling us in today. We got Gabe Guerrero from South Texas Bigfoot Investigations. Gabe started a Facebook group, pro non-kill Bigfoot investigation group, where people can share their pictures, their sound clips, their videos. If you've caught anything that you think is anything related to Bigfoot, this is a group that he put together that people are sharing their stories, their experiences, and we just wanted to reach out to him and be like, hey, we want to hear from you and your experiences.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to hear what kind of experiences he's had, or what he's had people call in and tell him. As we were kind of sitting down and talking before we get this phone call, we were talking about some instances where we've had, unexplained, mysterious encounters with what we didn't know exactly what they were.
Well,
But then,
what exactly are we talking about here? Like sounds, sightings? I mean,
well, one of them was a little bit of both.
yeah.
All right, so what? All right, here we go. One night, not too long ago, I don't know, maybe 4 months ago, me and Ben was out thermal hunting, and we were walking along. Well, we were in the orchard, Robert. You know where we were, and the San Gabriel River runs right along that. So we were walking down through there, and we seen some heat signatures off in the woods down by the river. And I seen it first, and I was in front of Ben. Ben was behind me, and I said, Ben, I threw my thermal up, and I was like, man, I see something. What the hell is that,
Mm-hmm.
And all I could see is like a big thermal signature, and it looked like a huge animal kind of like hunched over.
Yeah.
And I could hear some grunt noises. I didn't know what that, and I was like, man, it sounds like pigs, but that's a big ass pig if that's a pig. And Ben starts laughing, and he's like, that's some pigs making bacon, So it was two pigs over there making bacon, and all I had to do is take one step to the right, and then I was able to get a different angle and see that, okay, it's not something unexplained or mysterious. Two pigs making bacon, man.
And from that angle, you
Wow.
could see it clear as day, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, you could tell exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, where I was standing, I mean, I had my thermal up and I'm looking and I see what you're seeing, and I'm like, if you're talking about what I'm looking at, I know exactly what's going on here. But I mean, that's just an example of how things can be.
Misconstrued or
Yeah.
to something you don't know what it is. Angles make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty interesting. I've been down there, that little orchard, it's first time I went down there, of course, I drove in late in the day, but it does give you different vibes, when you have the water so close to you and the way it's kind of grown up a little bit,
Yeah.
all those creepy trees. And when we were taking those pictures of the sky at night.
Oh,
and,
dude, that was
sick. It gives certain areas like that just give you a different vibe, a different aura, and you never know. You guys could be knocking on the door, or at least fresh bacon.
Yeah, it does feel like a haunting type place, when it, especially on a really bright moonlit night. You got those old pecan trees, the ones that are dead, and they're
Yeah.
silhouetted behind the bright moonlight and stuff.
Kind of like an eerie set,
yeah,
but
it does.
yeah.
But it's beautiful at the same time.
So you bring up a good point. I mean, who hasn't been a little kind of sketched out or spooked moving out in the woods at night?
Mhm.
I mean, guys getting to the deer stand early in the morning, guys leaving after dark.
Yeah.
That's typically when we hear a lot of people talking about, this is when I'm seeing something, or this is when I'm hearing something. And it could be something that's been unexplained. And to some people, it's not unexplainable. They have seen and witnessed something that to us sounds like Bigfoot.
Right.
Yeah, you bring up a good point right there. Is as far as animal movement, the first hour or the first half hour before daylight, and the first half hour after daylight, and then the last hour.
It's almost
Same.
it's almost like that breakover hour between
Yeah.
night and day. I've been doing a lot of reading, since we're starting to do these podcasts, just to, kind of brush up on what people see, what people hear in it. There's a lot of, I keep reading where people say that there's a certain time of the day that I'm gonna call it the breakover, that they say that like your vision, the human vision, is trying to adjust, and when it adjusts, that everything seems kind of grainy at that moment. Call it, whatever you want to call it, but that's kind of when the turning point of, is it going to be there or something's going to happen? He says it's kind of like
It's that golden hour.
Yeah, you go, a perfect deal, golden hour. Yeah, but everybody talks where it's your eyes adjust and it's a little grainy, and there a lot of people say that's kind of the 101 for movement.
And anybody that's sat in a deer stand a half hour before daylight, or the last half hour of legal shooting light,
Right.
I don't know how many deer you see,
Mm-hmm.
but you see more deer during that time that aren't deer. You're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
that's actually a cactus.
Right.
Oh, that's a tree stump.
Yep.
Oh, that's a cow that's further away than what it looks.
It's a
because
deer. It's a deer tree.
It's a deer tree.
It's a
Yeah.
deer cactus.
And a perfect example is like, people go by and they build their guns, they go hunting. What's the first thing they say? I want this scope that costs this much. Why? Because it brings in that much
That
more
light.
light. So I got that extra 5-10 minutes to do what I need to do. And, just
But
kind of an
does
important
that
time of
10
day.
minutes make a difference, Jimmy?
I think it does. I've shot quite a few deer where I'm like packing up. I'm like, I can't see shit anymore.
Mhm.
And as I'm packing up, I look up and I'm like,
Boom, there he is.
oh, that's a deer. Oh, that is a deer.
yeah.
And I know just from our experience and the things that we've heard and we've seen, I'm going to say, we've heard some crashes that are sound, that's not a pig. That's not a pig. That's got to be a raging bull coming towards us right now, and I don't know what's going on. I've seen things falling, like limbs and all that stuff that are falling, and I'm like, okay, I'll chalk it up to deadfall, and that sounds like, okay, that's explainable. But then there's some things that we hear seeing it from a distance that is kind of moving, like tree limbs and brush just kind of
Are
getting
you saying
pushed
that
out
a
of the way.
tree makes a sound when it falls?
Definitely. There's definitely that sound. But I mean, I'm talking more along the lines of like the sounds correlating to what you think it is, right?
Right.
And that sparked our interest in this, is like, hey man, I mean, we're hearing howls, we're hearing things. And we're hearing the phone ring.
Hearing the
There you
phone
go.
ring.
So let's see what we can get here. This is actually Gabe Guerrero, so let's bring him in.
All right.
Hello, this is Ben. You're live on the podcast. Gabe, is this can you hear me clearly? How about now?
Yeah, I can still hear you that way.
Excellent. So we have you brought into our sound mixer right now. You've actually entered the chat. So welcome to the podcast. You're here with the crew, Jimmy Trent and Robert Garcia. They're joining us as part of this podcast, and we're glad to have you here, man. It's just we were just kind of talking about how we're bringing you in audio. We can hear you clearly. We hope the audience can hear you clearly. But let's talk a little bit about what you got going on. So I did a little bit of an introduction and said there's a gentleman we're bringing on from South Texas Bigfoot Investigations. This was a group that you started on Facebook. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had actually made a trip to Kentucky, a Kentucky expedition. It was a BFRO and the KBRO, which is Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization,
Right.
ran by Charlie Raymond. And I was talking to him, relaying that there was activity in South Texas, and he was telling me, at that time I wasn't on Facebook. Oh, by the way, appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely.
But,
Absolutely, man. Good time to have
Yeah,
you.
we appreciate you coming on.
He suggested I get on Facebook and just open up the subject, and sure enough, a lot of people started joining the group with their whatever they brought to the table,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But then I kind of closed the group because don't want to have people in the group that are bashing others. You know, you hear a lot of that, and I've noticed in my group that sometimes there was a lady in the group, but she took about 3 years before she even shared anything. So I want it to be a safe zone for people to talk about Bigfoot. Ask questions. You could question stuff, but do it in a good manner, you know. So the group has grown over the years. To me, it's not about numbers. It's more about learning more,
absolutely
sharing, communicating.
quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And you know, we thank you for starting that group, because from what we can see, it's opened up a platform for people to feel comfortable talking about something that in a different place they normally wouldn't feel so comfortable. And I think you and I had a chance to talk before this, and we talked about how that kind of does happen. And from your experience, do you feel like people can kind of join the group, kind of see what people are talking about, and then maybe they slowly open up about their experiences?
Yeah, it's for starters that there's not. I know there's some researchers in South Texas. I know there's people who've had activity or events, and it's more for an outlet for them to reach out. And it's kind of, you know, there's not. I do most of the posting myself, but there's not like every day something going on. But there's no embellishment, no exaggeration. It's the truth what I'm sharing when I find out from a witness that they've had a sighting, and I do it more for them. I could walk away from my experiences over the years. I went in 2012 to my first expedition to Arkansas.
What
But
part of Arkansas by
since
chance?
that time, I've learned so much.
What part of Arkansas was that by chance? Just curious. And you can
We
say,
were by the Buffalo River. It was kind of like on the north side of the state.
okay, north side of the state. All right.
Yeah, this is Robert, man. Nice to meet you, by the way. No, my question was
Okay.
like, what basically piqued your interest into this? You know, this is kind of a different subject. You know, for me, it's not something that I just woke up in the morning and said, hey, I want to do some research or find out about this. Like, what piqued your interest to say this is something I want to pursue?
I've always been interested in when there'd be documentaries about creatures,
Mm-hmm.
cryptids.
Yeah.
Always would pay attention and want to see that on a TV show. But I've also learned over time that some of those shows are that they kind of lead you on, because it's
Right.
a show,
Mhm.
TV
Right, yeah.
show. But the best thing I could have done, which I ended up doing, was going out there and experiencing it myself, asking questions, talking to people, being in the field,
Wow.
listening, being in the dark, in the woods usually with other researchers, and just listening and taking that information and sharing with other people,
Mhm.
and kind of storing it for archives for future reference.
Right.
So what?
What works with them? What do they do? Do they do calls? I learned right off the bat. I utilize a lot of audio recorders. I'll have one always on me, and I turn it on before I get to my destination, because that was one of the first things in Arkansas. We heard a howl, and nobody was recording.
Wow.
So you can't review it. You can't listen to it over and over again. So I like to have a recorder going, because it might be just a couple of seconds,
Right.
and it's over.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm big on audio recorders. I'll have one on me. I'll hang stuff around the camp, and I hang them up high. I use a paint pole extension that I've kind of altered, and I hang them up about 14 feet up in the air. I have a hard time finding them when I go back for them, but so I know nobody's messing with my recorder.
Oh,
Right.
so you take it out there and leave it for a bit.
Yeah, I mean they're just Sony recorders. You don't need no $200 recorder. I've heard people say you need a better recorder. You need a if you're going to capture something, you're going to capture it. And these are for like conferences.
Mm-hmm.
They work great, depending on where you're at. If it's usually off a trail, most sounds carry down those trails. Sounds get channeled to the recorder.
Interesting.
So they've worked great for me. I put them in a modified phone case holder that can take the weather, the rain, stuff like that, and it'll go for like 3 days.
So what type of landscape, I guess, or maybe what type of equipment and landscape and time frame are you looking for when you go out to do your research? Like what is the most prominent, target rich environment that you guys look for when you go out?
Well, they don't. I've learned they don't need much room, because they blend in so well into the brush. So if there's a water source, a creek, usually they're along the creeks. Some brush. If you see deer, of course, and I found out there's activity along the sandy areas along the coast of South Texas. You would think not, but when I worked in the oil field, I would see hog out there. I would see deer, and I'm like, if they can find water and a food source, and they're the food source for the Bigfoots,
Mm-hmm.
they can be there. So
So
but some cover, some water, it could be everywhere, really. I mean, I've gotten reports from all over Texas.
So this is super interesting to us, and we're hearing things that you're talking about, and I'm locked in. And the reason is you're talking about something that exists. You're talking about Bigfoot, and you're talking about it from experience. Can you explain to the listeners right now, to the people watching this, exactly what you're describing? Because if they haven't seen it and they haven't heard it, and all they're referencing is what people are basically the folklore.
The Hollywood Bigfoot.
Can you explain to people, when we reference Bigfoot, what kind of creature, if you could describe it, what kind of creature are we talking about here?
The daylight sighting that I had of a juvenile, I tell people I could just see it from just around the neck area up, and that one kind of reminded me of Eddie Munster, which is kind of funny, but that's the way it looked to me.
I mean, that's what I would picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. A friend of mine ended up spotting him a little later. I was looking for my binoculars, and when he had that sighting of that juvenile, he was cussing left and right. He was pretty excited. That was in by Bandera. Texas.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's
that's
kind of
sad.
on the edge of the hill country.
The hill country, San Antonio area, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, I had already been out there one time by myself, and the landowner had invited me because he was getting negative vibes from a bigger group that he just had a bear on his property, and he told me bears don't stack rocks, Gabriel. And he had a lot of. He never had a sighting out there, but his son did later on. But that was a juvenile out there that I saw, and then the first one that I saw ended up being a 9-footer. I actually thought I was dreaming.
9 feet.
I didn't even make it back, because we're running around all day looking for, footprints in the mud, breaks.
Gabriel, not
listening.
not to discredit your experience or your validity to this, but like just for the audience here, what was it that you used as a gauge to say this was 9 feet? I'm curious because I'm hearing this and that blows my mind because typically I hear 6, 7, maybe 8 foot, but a 9 foot. Like, what was it that you used as a association to say that's 9 feet?
I ended up, because this is usually just like a weekend thing. You get there Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday morning, I'm leaving. I'm usually leaving.
Right.
And I was in a hurry. I actually thought that I had dreamt it. And I even told the person that was kind of running the show out there, I told her, hey, I had a dream that I saw a Bigfoot. But remember, I have my audio recorder going all the time.
Okay.
And I started hearing my car was getting hit. I actually was supposed to be in a different campground that night, and I was at the main campground, and there was an overflow parking lot, and I was so tired, I just crashed in that back area. And further down is like a place for a boat ramp, stuff like that. So I was back, but I was kind of close to the brush.
And you were hearing noises banging against your car?
In the recorder. Recorder. This was after the fact. I'm reviewing my audio recorder, and I could hear that. And then an hour later, everything that I thought I had dreamt, I was speaking out loud. And the reason I was doing it was I was hoping my audio recorder was still going. It was a different audio recorder. And so I was describing what I was seeing, my recorder validated what I thought I was dreaming. Because I asked my wife, I go, do I talk for 17 minutes in my sleep? And she's like, no. I go,
I might do some other things in my sleep, but I don't think I'm talking that long.
Yeah, and the whole time, I was laid back, and then it was to my right side passenger window in the brush line. And I'm getting to about the height. But I ended up seeing it there, looking in my direction, and I was kind of leaned back. I started straightening up. I didn't want to spook it. And I just kept watching it. It was actually, if I was looking at it, it was facing to the right. And at the end, it actually, what I describe as micro movements, started facing back toward me. And at the end, it was actually rocking back and forth like it was agitated. And you'll see that, with chimpanzees, when things start getting tense, they'll be rocking back and forth. And so I found this out or heard the recorder after the fact, and I'm like, oh my God, I did go through this. But like I heard Jimmy's comments, you question yourself, even though that was my first sighting, you still question yourself. Did this really happen? Did I see it? I didn't have a person with me, but my recorder, like I said, validated it for me. So after that, I went back to that same spot, put my vehicle in the same spot, and I was looking at what I had seen, and I went to the tree that it was hiding behind, and I went and measured, and that's where I came up with a height of 9 foot.
Nice.
So when you went over, did you notice any type of weird, off-putting smells or sounds? After maybe it ran off, and maybe it's still seeing you, but you couldn't see it, or after you could no longer see it, it was just done and over.
Well, no. I actually was reaching for my thermal camera when the incident actually happened, and when I was reaching for it and I couldn't find it on the floorboard, so I looked down to grab it. And when I did that, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how they can watch you and key on your movements and what you're doing, and then they react off of that. And I've seen that in another video online where a family was had their kids on toboggans on a hill and they're videotaping them, and you see this Bigfoot up on the top of the ridge, and it gets caught out in the open, and it just stays motionless until they pan away, and then when they pan away, it's gone when they come back.
Kind of like a deer or an animal.
watching.
So the
And they're-
saying
and they're
stands
patient.
true. They are the king of hide and go seek, huh?
Yeah, well,
I
we're
mean-
so busy doing, with all our electronics, and I've seen even campgrounds where I hear the howl. A friend of mine hears the howl too, and we're like, "That's a Bigfoot." And I look around the campground, and you got a lot of snowbirds down there,
Right.
and they're all busy
Winter
grilling.
Texans and stuff, right?
Yeah, and they're so busy in what they're doing, nobody's reacting, nobody's looking around because they're not in tune to what's heard. Or some will, if they're there long enough, they'll start picking up on it if they stop moving for a little bit. So, like I said, that big one, that 9-footer, all I could see was the edges of the hair, and it was big.
What
And,
color? What color was it? What was it? Dark or daytime?
No, this was like 4 o'clock in the morning.
4 o'clock in the morning.
It was kind of like a misty morning,
Uh-huh.
and there was no light in that area. There was one further down to the right by the boat ramp, but I could just see the black silhouette and the size of it. And I mean, I've watched a lot of documentaries. I've seen people move, and a lot of times I can figure out somebody if I've seen them long enough at a distance. I could tell by the way they walk. Oh, that's so and so. Oh,
Mhm.
that's this person, because I noticed their gait. But like I said, this thing took off, and where it was standing behind the tree, there was actually a little slope that started going down to a lower spot. There was like a trail further down. It was kind of like a little valley kind of look.
Yeah, sure.
And I had another recorder in that area, and I went to that recorder and I could hear movements through that brush on that recorder. So I know something was there, and I saw it. And then there was another couple, which I didn't know. They were actually sleeping in the parking lot, more in the middle. And while I was crashing, she heard stuff through her window busting through the brush in that area where I was closer to. So she heard movement also.
So this sounds it sounds like it was near a lake or river, like you said, the Buffalo River.
It was Conroe Lake,
Conroe
Sam
Lake.
Houston National Forest. I was on the Kegel campground, and I was in the back overflow parking lot where I was.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess that kind of answered my question. I was gonna, I guess, ask about how much, how much room is to roam out there, how much land. But yeah, the Houston National Forest, pretty good size chunk of land there.
Yeah. There's a lot of activity around there in that area.
Yeah, we've noticed that. We've noticed that.
Huh?
Like I've noticed that on the sightings maps and stuff. There's a lot, and during current times right now, you look on the Facebook groups and stuff like that. There's a lot of activity in that Sam Houston National Forest area, and you're seeing a lot of people reporting things, sharing videos. Whether it's Bigfoot Research Organization, BFRO, or other groups, you're seeing a lot of activity from that area, and it's really interesting to me that you're talking about something you've experienced in that same area. We're here live with Gabe Guerrero from South Texas Bigfoot Investigations, and he just shared with us a sighting that he had in the Sam Houston National Forest. This is something that we are so glad to have had him come and share this story with us. And this is just one of many during his investigations that he's encountered. And we're just thankful that he's sharing these experiences with us, because not a lot of people are comfortable talking about it. Jimmy, you yourself were talking about how it almost, you felt a little discredited, or maybe it wasn't real. And Gabe's kind of attesting that to this here, like he said something super cool about, like, I thought I was dreaming it. Did you have a similar experience, or is that kind of some of the phenomena, like we don't know and we can't explain it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. Is if there was some type of feeling that overwhelmed you? For me, it wasn't. But there's there's theories out there that Bigfoot may have a mythical power of, like, the Men in Black. You didn't see this, wave the pen or whatever.
Sure.
You took the question out of me. That's what I was going to ask. It's
Yeah,
like, do you feel a certain...
What was your experience during that sighting, Gabe, and what, like, emotion, feeling you're talking about? I felt like I was dreaming it. Can you dive into that a little bit more so that we can kind of get a real time how you were feeling during that sighting?
Yeah, you can. What I was feeling, you could hear it on the recorder as the event started, because I was actually I wasn't gasping for air, but I was
heavy breathing.
Not even heavy breathing. I was trying to control my breathing because it's exciting and scary at the same time.
Right.
So I was trying to calm myself while I was watching it, and you could hear my breathing calm down, and it's a roller coaster ride, like I said, because you're wondering, is it really happening? It's always better if there's somebody with you they're seeing it too. Like you were saying about y'all seeing that Lechusa or the thermal hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but both of y'all were sharing the thermal. I didn't have that. That was the downfall.
Yeah, you didn't have that confirmation, but you know what you saw, and you saw something that, again, nobody has a reason to discredit you, because you're not one to go and spread false, accusations, or, I'm just here spreading stories for the clout.
Yeah.
You're just somebody who's going and taking people's, hey, I'm seeing some activity and I'm heading that way right now to go do some investigating of my own. And during that investigation, you actually see something. So I find it so fascinating that there's groups and organizations that are taking an interest in this and following up on it, and kind of adding to the validity of, hey, this is something real.
Yeah. It's pretty sad, the train of people that would take a story like this, like your experience, Gabe, and they would basically steal your story and then just add to it for views or likes, or start making their own little gift shop or whatever. It's amazing how people will take it. And now I understand why you have a closed group, because legitimacy is 100%, and keeping it safe is the other thing. We talk about that pretty often, and how people react to that. There's so many different emotions that people, when you say Bigfoot, it could go one to the extreme other way.
Yeah, it could. But there's just one answer that I really want to know is what is Bigfoot? Is it a subspecies of giant what was the the giant Pithecus or something like that? Giganopithecus. Is it a strain off the human evolution? Is it? I don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
But
the anthropologists have found that we've got Neanderthal in us, Homo sapien, and then they're finding Denisovan also. And now I was reading that there's basically a fourth DNA in there, and they're trying to figure that one out. And you always see where they try to show man's evolution, from way back when, and you see these subjects getting taller and taller, and some more robust. But it's more, like I said, it's not a tree; it's more like a bush. They keep finding little things in between, and if the Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo sapiens were all breeding, who's to say there wasn't this other subject matter, this other subject?
Right.
That's something that we kind of knocked on the door for the conversation last week, and we were talking about how, like, well, if we're still discovering new species out in the woods and on land and underwater,
right,
why would we discredit a species that we are seeing and hearing? Like, what is the thing behind Bigfoot that people don't want anyone to know about it? I kind of feel like there's cover-ups, or or there's reasons why we're not so open to sharing this particular sighting. It's not a unicorn. It's not something that we can't tangibly see. There's people with sightings on record and audio clips and video clips and things like that. But it's so hard to just get. Yeah, I agree. It exists.
It's like Jimmy said the other day, they found 20 something new species, and they're so quick to put it out there that to not know, they know it's a new species, but they know nothing about it. And they started, just blasting it all over. My wife the other night was showing me, it's called a sunfish, and you can catch them, but they're very, very rare in the ocean, and they pop up. The big giant, and it's like one in every 100,000 catches or something astronomical like that. But as soon as they catch them, they post them and they talk about it. It's got a name. Here it is. Why something that's been around for centuries? Why is it still so elusive?
Since biblical ages, we've been talking about giant figures, and it just continuously gets discredited. I talked a little bit with Gabe last time. We talked about how giant bones and stuff were actually skeleton remains, and skulls and stuff were turned into the Smithsonian, and that stuff's not anywhere to be found. I mean, It's just it's gone. We don't have record of it. Like, what is it about this creature that we just can't find DNA, fur samples, stool samples, or is there, and is it being covered up?
Well, that leads me to another quick question, Gabe. Have you ever collected or found any hair follicles or anything like that in relation to what you see or your investigations?
I mean, I've seen hair samples on fence lines, but
okay.
The best rule of thumb is unless you see a Bigfoot lean against that fence, it could be really anything.
Right.
So and then there was a show they were showing some researchers collecting specimens, and it turned out to be some type of like a lichen or something like that.
Huh.
It wasn't even a hair. It was something else.
Like some kind of.
I'm pretty much. I'm not the best tracker. If you see a really good footprint out in the middle of nowhere, that's what I'm hoping for.
So you're talking about footprints now. There's been thousands of cases of footprints and castings and all this stuff. Like, what is your experience with footprints?
Well, I mean, I've been on trails where what will happen is you have our main trails. They'll use those trails, but they'll also have another trail outside of the main trail,
mm-hmm.
and they basically run along there, and they're watching us. We've seen even in campgrounds where you've seen a type of nest like limbs pulled over, and it's used kind of like a way to hide from us, and then it seems like they're monitoring a campground.
Yeah, maybe protecting young or doing something where they're kind of got some adolescent. They're just kind of like give them a little shelter.
We're probably their TV, friends of mine have been on expeditions, and they're doing something. They're playing guitar and trying to act normal, and then they hear something like giggles out in the woods, but it sounds different. It might sound more gibberish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're entertaining them.
Interesting.
And then there was I can go all kinds of directions. There was a lady that I met, and she was telling me her grandmother told her that when she was young, she would play on the porch. I don't remember where the house was, and that a little Bigfoot would come and just watch her play. It didn't play with her; it just would be at the end of the porch and watched her play. We're curious about them, but they're curious about us.
Fascinating,
also.
Dude.
Do you think that there's any type of danger to a Bigfoot being in an area for people? Do you think that they would actively hurt or harm people, or do you think that they're like any other wildlife out there? If they see you, smell you, whatever, they want to stay hidden or get away, one of the two?
Yeah, they'll mostly move away from you, but there's going to be instances where you might be in a spot before they get down the trail, and it's got a little one, and it's going to do like any other animal. It's going to protect their young. May bluff charge you. I haven't had a bluff charge. We've had stuff thrown at us from the woods at night, trying to maybe redirect us in a different way.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, like rocks and sticks, or
Actually, one of it, we were kind of close to a little swampy area, and there was a large group. We had like 12 people, I think, with us. I was on the far end. I was leading going in because I had a thermal, so we kind of stopped because it was starting to get more standing water on the trail, and not everybody had rain boots to go in, skaters.
Mhm.
So we stopped. Well, the guys further on the backside heard something like a little low growl, so they started stepping toward the brush line. And right then, when that happened, all of a sudden we just heard like screams, and we heard something. You could hear it coming through the trees. I mean, it had velocity. It was coming through the trees. And what they found the next day, the only thing they could find was it looked like a 2x4, like a small 2x4.
Interesting.
Coming through the trees. And right after that incident, you could hear actually hunting dogs going off. We don't know if a Bigfoot ran into that hunting group, but they got really loud and crazy. I mean, really loud and crazy.
so on estimate. I mean, you said that in your experience, they don't need much room to roam, and they can. It's not an expansive area, is what a lot of people may think. So with that, do you think that there's very few, or do you think that there's more of them than what we may think?
I think there's a lot more than people think, because sometimes you hear people say, so there's more than one. And yes, because, y'all were talking about those maps y'all see from those other groups,
Yep.
and it shows a lot of East Texas,
Right.
and maybe some Central Texas. It doesn't even have, they don't have my map, which is South Texas.
Yeah.
It would really cover more of Texas if they had my reports, and I have I have a map from Texas, and I have pins for South Texas. So that's what I'm mostly concentrating on.
Right.
Because I would hear people say, "There's nothing in South Texas." I said, "No, you need to get in the field and talk to people." And that's how I've learned so much, just cruising the back roads and like, oh, you got to go talk to this guy. Or in the oil field, I ran into some guys that actually had something come in from behind them on a 12-foot tripod, and they were scared shitless. They had a gun and they had bows, but they said this thing was big coming in behind them, and it was taking breaths like it was smelling them. It was two cousins, and both of them, I talked to both of them. They were freaked out that night, and whatever it was that came in, they said it was tall, and then it just backed out. They said it wasn't a hog, it wasn't a deer, it wasn't a person. There's some negative sides, like I said, there is, and you're not going to hear about it in the news because, like you said, there is cover-ups. And one reason for a cover-up, I had one witness telling me he was out on a hunting lease. It was from a logging firm, but they had a hunting lease there, and his son took him out there. They dropped him off at the blind. He hadn't seen a deer all day, and but what he did see was two Bigfoots, a big one and a little one, and he filmed it or took pictures. I don't remember exactly, but he had photographic evidence. So when they came back to pick him up, they asked him, "Did you shoot?" He goes, "No, but I got this." Well, one of the guys that came with his son was from that logging firm, and he goes, "Can I see the camera?" And he pulled everything out of the camera. He basically destroyed the evidence, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "We can't have this come out, the truth." He goes, you know how they would shut down the logging industry? We would lose money.
So
and that's a big part of it, is
so
losing money.
a representative from the logging industry wanted to collect the pictures from this individual who said, "I spotted this and I have proof." Showed him the pictures, and this representative said, "We got to get rid of this."
Yeah, he didn't show him the pictures. He just pulled all the film out of it.
Gotcha.
To the sunlight. He destroyed it by doing that. But it was to protect the logging. They've done. I mean, they've done that to protect the little fish when they were building I forgot where they were building a dam. they stopped construction because of the little fish. So imagine something that's kind of similar to us, human kind of built to it. And then some of them, just so y'all know, some of them look more human from the face, and then some look more apish. And my understanding is the more apish ones are more aggressive. The human ones,
a little bit more primate than humanoid.
So
a little bit, the human-looking ones tend to be a little calmer, curious.
could that be two
The
different
apish ones
species?
you don't want to mess with.
Could
You
that,
just- I mean, imagine. I mean, a cow can hurt you. Imagine, and they say chimpanzees are like 10 times stronger than a man. So imagine something. Chimpanzees maybe 5 foot, maybe a bonobo.
yeah.
Imagine something 9 foot tall.
I just
know
saw
how
a
much-
video. I just saw a video the other day of what they were. I mean, I looked at the video. I saw what I was watching. What was shared on YouTube, and this was a creature, which I looked at it and thought it was like a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
This was a hairy, brownish creature in the tree line, standing about, I would say, 8 foot tall, and this creature was picking up like down trees
Mm-hmm.
and lifting them. Bro, you and I clear trees all the time out on the hunting property and all that stuff, and we gotta pull with chains and trucks and side by sides and use methods like that. This was somebody something picking up a down tree, just like lifting it and flipping it over with ease. Well, guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation. We sure are enjoying our deep dive with our special guest, Gabe Guerrero from South Texas Bigfoot Investigations. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you tune in next week where we continue the conversation on this special series of the strange and unexplained encounters. Thank you for joining Cast and Blast Podcast. We'll see you next week.